Doctors said it was medically impossible. His mother had spent $25 million trying every specialist in the world. But 30 minutes after a homeless girl gave him murky water from a clay cup, an 8-year-old boy who had never spoken a single word in his entire life opened his mouth and said, "Mama." What she gave him wasn't medicine, at least not the kind you get from a pharmacy. And what happened next didn't just shock his billionaire mother. It exposed everything we think we know about healing, shattered the walls between science and ancient wisdom, and proved that sometimes the most powerful cures come from the people society throws away. This is the true story of the voice that came from nowhere. Welcome to the story room. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about a boy who lived in silence. Not the peaceful kind of silence, the lonely kind. The kind that makes you feel like you're trapped behind glass, watching the world, but never really being part of it. His name was Daniel, and he was 8 years old. He lived in a mansion in Los Angeles, the kind of house you see in movies with gates so tall you can't see over them and gardens so perfect they don't look real. His mother, Catherine Morgan, was one of the most powerful real estate developers in California. She'd built skyscrapers that touched the clouds. She'd turned abandoned neighborhoods into thriving communities. Forbes called her a genius. Fortune called her unstoppable. But none of that mattered when she looked at her son. Daniel had never spoken. Not once. Not a single word in his entire 8 years of life. It wasn't that he couldn't physically speak. The doctors had tested everything. His vocal cords were perfect. His brain scans showed no abnormalities. Every specialist from Boston to Singapore had examined him and said the same thing. "Mrs. Morgan, there's nothing medically wrong. His body works fine. We just don't know why he won't talk." Catherine had spent over $25 million searching for answers. Speech therapists came to the house 3 times a week. Neurologists flew in from around the world. She'd even taken Daniel to healers in India and Brazil, hoping that maybe, just maybe, someone would have the answer. Nothing worked. Daniel communicated through an expensive tablet his mother had bought him. He'd type out what he wanted to say, and people would read it. But it wasn't the same. Catherine would lie awake at night wondering what her son's voice sounded like. Was it high or low? Soft or loud? Would he laugh like she did? Or would his laughter sound different? She'd built an empire from nothing, but she couldn't solve the mystery of her own child. Every morning was the same. Daniel would wake up in his enormous bedroom, bigger than most people's apartments, and the housekeeper, Rosa, would come in with a smile. "Good morning, sweetheart," she'd say cheerfully. "Ready for another beautiful day?" Daniel would nod. That's what he always did. Nod, shake his head, point, gesture. 8 years of silent answers to a noisy world. Breakfast was lonely. Catherine would sit at one end of their long dining table, scrolling through her phone, answering emails, making calls. Daniel would sit at the other end, eating pancakes that the chef had made with blueberries arranged in a smiley face. The distance between them wasn't just physical, it was emotional, too. "Morning, honey," Catherine would say, glancing up just long enough to make eye contact before diving back into her work. "Big day today. I have 3 meetings, but I'll be home by dinner. Mr. Peterson will work with you on your lessons." Daniel would nod and continue eating in silence. After breakfast came tutoring. Daniel was actually very smart, ahead of most kids his age in reading and math. His mind worked perfectly fine. It was just his voice that wouldn't cooperate. Then came speech therapy with Dr. Williams, a kind woman who'd been working with him for almost a year. "Let's try the breathing exercises again," she'd say with endless patience. "Remember, push the air from deep in your belly. Feel it move up through your throat." Daniel would try. He'd push and strain and concentrate with everything he had. But nothing would come out except air. Just breath. No sound. No words. Just silence. "That's okay," Dr. Williams would say, patting his shoulder. "We'll try again next time. You're doing great." But Daniel didn't feel like he was doing great. He felt broken. The only place Daniel felt even a little bit at peace was in the garden. Behind the mansion, there was an acre of perfectly manicured lawn with flower beds, a fountain, and one old oak tree in the corner that didn't quite fit with the rest of the expensive landscaping. That tree became Daniel's refuge. He'd sit under it for hours, just watching the world go by. Birds would land on the branches above him and sing without thinking about it.
It seemed so easy for them.
They didn't need therapy or specialists or millions of dollars. They just opened their beaks and sound came out. Daniel would open his mouth too, trying to imitate them, trying to force even the smallest noise to escape. But nothing ever did. Just that same empty silence that had followed him his entire life. The staff moved around the estate like ghosts, gardeners trimming hedges, pool cleaners skimming leaves, security guards walking the perimeter. All these people everywhere, and Daniel felt completely alone. His mother would come home in the evenings, heels clicking against the marble floors, bringing with her the smell of expensive perfume and the weight of a busy day. She'd find him in the garden and crouch down to his level. "How was your session with Dr. Williams?" she'd ask. Daniel would pull out his tablet and type. "Same as always." Catherine's smile would tighten, but she'd force it to stay in place. "Well, we keep trying, right? That's what we do. We never give up." Then she'd stand, already pulling her phone from her pocket, already moving on to the next crisis, the next deal, the next problem she could actually solve. Daniel would watch her go and wonder if she'd ever really hear him. Not just read his typed words, but actually hear his voice. He wondered if he'd ever hear it himself. The sun would set, painting the Los Angeles sky in shades of orange and pink. Rosa would call him in for dinner. Then there would be bath time, story time with a book he'd read 3 times before, and bed. Tomorrow would be exactly the same. And the day after that. And the day after that. Daniel was trapped in a golden cage, surrounded by everything money could buy and nothing that really mattered. He had toys he didn't play with, a pool he rarely swam in, and a voice he'd never used. What he didn't know was that everything was about to change. That a gap in the fence he'd never noticed would let in someone who would see him, really see him, in a way no expensive specialist ever had. That tomorrow, a stranger would slip into his perfect, silent world carrying something that looked like dirty water in a clay cup, and that within hours of drinking it, he would speak his first word. But tonight, he was just a lonely boy lying in an enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what it would feel like to scream, to laugh, to say, "I love you" out loud instead of typing it. Tonight, he was still silent. Tomorrow, everything would break open. Her name was Lily Chun, and she talked to herself because there was nobody else to listen. "Okay, think," she muttered, crouching behind a dumpster in downtown Los Angeles. "Mrs. Patterson needs more of that ginger tea for her stomach. Mr. Davis wanted the mint salve for his headaches. And that lady in the apartment building, what did she ask for? Lavender? No, chamomile. Definitely chamomile." Lily was 11 years old, though most people thought she was younger. She was small for her age, with straight black hair she kept in a ponytail and clothes that had been washed so many times the colors had faded to nothing. Her sneakers had holes in them, covered with duct tape that was starting to peel off. But her eyes were sharp, always watching, always calculating, always surviving. In her canvas bag, she carried small glass jars and cloth pouches, each one carefully labeled in her neat handwriting. Inside were remedies, herbs, tinctures, salves, things her grandmother had taught her to make before she died 3 years ago. Lily's grandmother, Mei Chin, had been a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. Not the fancy kind with a clinic and certificates on the wall. The real kind. The kind who learned from her grandmother, who learned from hers, going back hundreds of years. Plants have been healing people since before there were doctors, Grandma May used to say, sitting at their tiny kitchen table in Chinatown, grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. You just have to know which ones to use and how to ask them for help. Lily had been 8 years old, watching her grandmother's wrinkled hands work their magic. Mixing powders, brewing teas, creating medicines that actually worked when the free clinic couldn't help. When Grandma May got sick, the doctors at the hospital had shrugged. "Kidney failure," they said. Not much we can do at her age except manage the pain. But Grandma May had managed her own pain with herbs and teas that worked better than any pills. And in those final months, she'd taught Lily everything. Every plant, every recipe, every secret that had been passed down through their family for generations. "This knowledge is older than this country," Grandma May had said, pressing her notebook into Lily's hands. "Don't let it die with me. Promise me." Lily had promised. Then Grandma May died, and Lily was sent to a group home. 3 miserable months of sleeping in a room with 6 other girls, eating food that tasted like cardboard, following rules that made no sense. They tried to throw away her grandmother's notebook, the one with all the recipes written in faded ink, and that's when Lily climbed out a window and never went back. Living on the streets wasn't an adventure. It was hard and scary and uncertain. But Lily had learned to survive. She slept in different places, sometimes a shelter when she could handle the questions, sometimes a church basement, sometimes just a doorway with her bag clutched tight. And she sold her remedies. Not to strangers who might ask too many questions, but to the people who needed her. Immigrants who couldn't afford doctors. Elderly folks on fixed incomes. Workers who couldn't miss a day of work for the flu. They found her through word of mouth. Whispers. Recommendations. The underground network of people who lived in the cracks of the city. Lily was good at living in cracks. Today, she needed fresh lavender. The patch she usually harvested from had been torn up by construction workers. So she'd been wandering north, into neighborhoods where kids like her didn't belong. Past the nice houses with their perfect gardens. Past the buildings with doormen who looked at her like she was dirt. All the way to where the houses became estates and the streets became private drives. She knew she shouldn't be here. The police in these neighborhoods didn't just move you along, they called social services, asked questions, created problems. But Lily was good at being invisible. That's when she saw the wall. It stretched for an entire block, 12 feet of stone and iron topped with cameras that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. Lily had passed plenty of rich houses in Los Angeles, but this was different. This was a fortress. She followed the wall out of curiosity. What kind of person needed this much security? What were they so afraid of? Near the corner, she found it. A section where the stones had shifted slightly, creating a gap just barely wide enough for a very small, very thin girl. Lily looked around. The street was empty. The afternoon sun beat down on spotless sidewalks. She could hear the hum of air conditioners, the distant sound of a lawn mower, but no voices. No footsteps. She shouldn't do it. It was trespassing. If she got caught, they'd send her back to the system for sure. And this time, they wouldn't let her escape so easily. But Lily had always been curious. And the gap seemed almost like an invitation. She dropped to her knees and squeezed through, stones scraping her arms, her bag catching on the rough edges. For a terrifying moment, she was stuck. Couldn't move forward or backward. Then she twisted sideways and tumbled through onto soft grass. The garden was like something from a dream. Lily had grown up around concrete and chain-link fences. Her grandmother's idea of a garden had been tomatoes in pots on their fire escape. But this was acres of green. Flower beds arranged in perfect rows. Trees that looked ancient. A fountain gurgling somewhere nearby. And silence. Not the silence of empty streets, but the silence of money. The kind that insulated you from the noise of the world. Lily stood slowly, brushing grass off her jeans. She should leave. Should squeeze back through that gap and never come back. But then she saw the herbs. Someone had planted a medicinal garden along the eastern wall. Not ornamental flowers, but actual useful plants. Rosemary, basil,
Sage.
And there, she couldn't believe it, a massive patch of lavender that desperately needed harvesting. Lily glanced at the mansion. It loomed in the distance, all glass and stone, but she didn't see anyone. No movement in the windows. No gardeners nearby. She moved quickly, pulling her small shears from her bag. Grandma May had taught her to never take more than a third of any plant. Leave enough so it keeps growing, she'd said. Lily was cutting her third stem when she heard it.
A sound.
Not quite a cry, not quite a gasp. Something in between. She spun around and saw him. A boy, maybe 7 or 8, sitting under an oak tree about 20 feet away. He was staring at her with wide eyes, his mouth slightly open, his whole body frozen. Lily's first instinct was to run. but something stopped her. Maybe it was the way he looked, not scared exactly, but surprised. Or maybe it was the way he was sitting all alone in this massive garden, like he was as out of place as she was. "Hey," she said carefully, keeping her voice low. "I'm not going to hurt you. I was just—" She held up the lavender. "I needed some of this. I'll leave now." The boy didn't move, didn't speak, just kept staring with those wide, unblinking eyes. Lily took a step toward the gap in the fence. "Look, I'm sorry I came in here, okay? I didn't mean to scare you. I'm going." Still nothing. No words. No movement.
Just that stare.
Something wasn't right. Normal kids would be yelling for help or running away. But this kid was just sitting there. And now that she looked closer, she could see something in his face. Not fear. Something else. Loneliness. The kind she recognized because she'd seen it in her own reflection. "Are you okay?" she asked, taking a tentative step closer. The boy blinked. His hands moved, and Lily realized he was holding a tablet. His fingers flew across the screen, then he turned it around so she could see. "Who are you?" Lily's breath caught. He wasn't talking. He was typing. "I'm Lily," she said slowly. I was just passing through." The boy typed again. "Are you real?" The question hit her harder than it should have. Here was this kid in this paradise of a garden, in what had to be a mansion worth millions, asking if she was real. Like he didn't see people very often. Like he'd been alone so long, he wasn't sure what was real anymore. Lily sat down in the grass, keeping her distance, but close enough to talk. "Yeah," she said softly. "I'm real. Are you?" For the first time, the boy's face changed. Just the slightest hint of a smile. And Lily realized that her day of looking for lavender had just gotten a lot more complicated. They sat together in the garden for almost an hour, and Lily learned a story. His name was Daniel. He lived in the mansion. He'd never spoken, not once in his entire life. The doctors said there was nothing wrong with him physically, but the words just wouldn't come. Lily told him about her grandmother, about the remedies, about living on the streets. She wasn't sure why she was being so honest with this rich kid, but something about him made her feel safe. Made her feel seen. "I should go," she finally said as the sun started sinking lower. "Before someone notices I'm here." Daniel typed quickly. "Will you come back?" Lily hesitated. Coming back was risky. Getting caught was almost guaranteed if she kept sneaking through that gap. But the desperate hope in the boy's eyes was hard to resist. "Maybe," she said. "If I can." She did come back. The next day. And the day after that. Each time, she and Daniel would sit under the oak tree and talk, or rather, Lily would talk and Daniel would type. She told him about the plants, the healing properties, the old knowledge her grandmother had passed down. Daniel told her about the loneliness, about watching everyone else speak so easily while he was trapped in silence, about his mother who loved him but didn't know how to reach him. They became friends. Two kids from completely different worlds, connected by loneliness. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Thursday afternoon, brutally hot. The kind of Los Angeles heat that makes the air shimmer and turns everything hazy. Lily slipped through her gap in the fence, expecting to find Daniel under their oak tree, as usual. Instead, she found him collapsed in the grass. "Oh no. Oh no, no, no," she ran to him, dropping to her knees beside him. Daniel's face was flushed a dangerous red. His skin was dry and burning hot. Heat exhaustion, maybe worse, heat stroke. "Hey," she said, shaking his shoulder gently. "Can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open, just barely. He was looking at her, trying to focus. Lily yanked off her backpack and fumbled for her water bottle. It was half full, lukewarm, but it was something. She lifted his head gently and tilted the bottle. "Come on," she whispered. "Stay with me." Some water went in. She saw his throat move, swallowing. His eyes opened a bit wider. She managed to drag him into the shade of the oak tree, her arms shaking with effort and fear. This kid needed more help than just water and shade. And that's when she remembered what was in her bag. At the very bottom, wrapped carefully in cloth, was a small ceramic vial. the most powerful remedy her grandmother had ever taught her. Grandma May had called it the awakener. "This is only for emergencies," her grandmother had said, pressing the vial into her hands before she died. "This medicine doesn't just wake up the body, it wakes up parts of you that have been sleeping, parts that have forgotten how to work. Use it wisely." Lily pulled out the vial with shaking hands. She broke the wax seal and immediately a sharp, earthy smell filled the air. "This is going to taste terrible," she warned Daniel. "But it'll help. I promise." She uncorked the vial and held it to his lips. "My grandmother used this for people who were really sick, people whose bodies had shut down. She said it wakes up everything inside you that's been asleep, everything that's forgotten how to work." She paused, looking at Daniel's unfocused eyes. "Your voice, maybe it's not broken. Maybe it's just been asleep. And maybe this can wake it up." It was crazy. Heat exhaustion and being unable to speak weren't the same thing. But Grandma May had always said the body was connected in ways doctors didn't understand. That trauma could lock things down, and that the right remedy at the right time could unlock them. Daniel looked at the vial. Then, slowly, he reached for it with trembling hands. He brought it to his lips and drank. The effect was immediate. His whole body jerked. His eyes flew wide open. His face contorted, not in pain exactly, but in shock, like he'd touched electricity. The vial fell from his hands. "Daniel." Lily grabbed his shoulders. "Are you okay?" Daniel's mouth was open, but no sound came out. His hands went to his throat. His eyes were wide with alarm and confusion, and something that looked almost like wonder. Then he gasped. Before the story continues, subscribe. These stories are written to change lives. It was a real gasp. An audible gasp. Sound where there had never been sound before. "Oh my God," Lily breathed. "It's working." Daniel's hands dropped from his throat. He stared at Lily, his chest heaving, his whole body trembling. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Testing. Feeling. Trying to understand what was happening inside his own body. They sat together in the shade, watching and waiting. Lily gave him more water. Watched his color improve. Watched as he periodically opened and closed his mouth, testing the new sensations in his throat. "The remedy needs time to work through your whole system," Lily explained, remembering her grandmother's teachings. "It's waking everything up. Opening pathways that have been closed. You might feel weird, tingly, warm. That's normal. That's it working." Daniel nodded, still looking dazed. 30 minutes passed, and Lily could see the changes accelerating. His breathing had steadied. His color was good. But more than that, there was something different about him. More alert, more present. Like something that had been sleeping was waking up. "Try again," Lily encouraged. "Don't force it. Just let it come." Daniel closed his eyes, drew a deep breath, and pushed. A sound came out. Not a word. Not even close. Just a rough, scratchy noise. But it was sound. Real, audible, unmistakable sound. Daniel's eyes flew open, his hand going to his throat in shock. "Yes." Lily grabbed his shoulders. "You did it. That was you. That was your voice." They practiced for 10 more minutes. Daniel making sounds, just sounds, nothing resembling words yet. And Lily celebrating every rough noise like it was a symphony. Then they heard it. A car engine. Tires on gravel. Daniel's eyes went wide with alarm. He pointed toward the driveway. A black SUV was pulling up to the mansion. "Your mom?" Lily asked. Daniel nodded, his face pale. "Okay, I should probably go before." But it was too late. The SUV doors opened. A woman in an expensive suit stepped out, already looking toward the garden. Already seeing them. And from the expression on her face, she was not happy. Lily had time to think one thing. This is either going to be a miracle or a disaster. She had no idea it would be both. Catherine Morgan moved across the lawn like a storm, fast, powerful, and impossible to stop. She'd left work early because of a feeling she couldn't shake. A mother's instinct that something was wrong. And now, seeing her son sitting under the oak tree with a strange, disheveled girl, she knew that instinct had been right. David, she called to her head of security. Code yellow. East Garden.
Now.
David was already moving, speaking into his radio. All units, unauthorized person on the property. East Garden. Converge but don't engage. Catherine was already running, every protective instinct in her body screaming danger. Her son, who couldn't call for help, alone with a stranger who had somehow gotten through their supposedly impenetrable security. As she got closer, she could see more details. The girl was young, maybe 11, with clothes that had seen better days and a backpack at her feet. Daniel was sitting against a tree, and something about him looked different, but she couldn't focus on that now. What mattered was that a stranger had gotten to her son. Daniel. Catherine dropped to her knees beside him, hands frantically checking him over. Are you hurt? Did she hurt you? Look at me, sweetheart.
He's fine, the girl said.
I didn't hurt him. I helped him. He had heat exhaustion. He was collapsed in the grass, and I. You what? Catherine's voice was dangerous now. You what? David arrived with 2 other security guards, forming a perimeter around them. Ma'am, David said. Should I call the police? Not yet, Catherine said, still examining Daniel. His color was good. His breathing normal. He didn't look injured. Then she saw it. On the grass beside Daniel, a small ceramic vial, empty, with dark residue still clinging to its sides. Catherine's blood ran cold. She snatched up the vial, held it to the light. What is this? Her voice rose sharply. What did you give my son? The girl's face went pale, but she lifted her chin. Medicine. He needed it. He was sick. Medicine. Catherine's voice could have cut glass. You're a child. You don't have medicine. You have. She looked at the dark residue, her mind jumping to the worst conclusions. Street drugs. Poison. Something that could hurt him, kill him. David, call an ambulance, she ordered. Tell them possible poisoning. We need his stomach pumped immediately. No, the girl shouted, stepping forward. It's not poison. It's a traditional remedy my grandmother taught me. It's just herbs, and I don't care what your grandmother taught you. Catherine snapped. You gave my son an unknown substance without permission, without supervision. Do you understand how dangerous that is? She turned to David. Detain her. When the police arrive, I want her arrested for. Daniel made a sound. It wasn't loud. It wasn't clear. It was barely more than a rough exhalation. But it was sound coming from her son's mouth. Catherine froze mid-sentence. She turned slowly to look at Daniel, her heart hammering. Did you just? Daniel's mouth was open. His eyes were wide. His hand was at his throat. He looked shocked, terrified, amazed. And then he made the sound again. Louder this time. More deliberate. Oh my God, Catherine breathed. Oh my God, Daniel, are you? She couldn't finish the sentence. 8 years. 8 years of absolute silence. Broken by these rough, imperfect, impossible sounds. The girl was speaking quickly now, urgently. The remedy I gave him, it's called the Awakener. My grandmother used it for people whose bodies had forgotten how to work. He didn't have heat stroke, Mrs. Morgan. He had heat exhaustion, yes, but I helped with that first. Then I gave him the remedy because I hoped it might help with his voice. Catherine's hands were shaking. That's not possible. We've seen dozens of specialists. They all said there was nothing physically wrong, the girl interrupted. And they were right. His voice wasn't broken. It was just locked. Asleep. And the remedy I gave him, it wakes things up. Opens things up. Reminds the body what it can do. That's ridiculous, Catherine said. But her voice lacked conviction. Because Daniel was making sounds. Real sounds. Right in front of her. Daniel reached for his tablet with shaking hands. Finally managed to type. She's telling the truth. The medicine worked. I can feel my voice waking up. Catherine stared at the words. At her son. At the impossible miracle happening before her eyes. Cancel the ambulance, she said quietly to David. But don't call the police yet. I need to understand what's happening. She turned to the girl. Tell me everything. What exactly did you give him? What's in it? How does it work? The girl took a deep breath and began to explain. About tongue fire root and voice bloom. About her grandmother's teachings. About traditional knowledge passed down through generations. About how some things couldn't be measured by machines. As she talked, Daniel kept making sounds, testing his voice, growing slightly braver with each attempt. And Catherine Morgan, billionaire, skeptic, woman of science and reason, found herself believing in something she never thought possible. That sometimes the most powerful medicine doesn't come from laboratories. It comes from the earth itself. And that her son's silence was finally, miraculously, beginning to break. But Daniel wasn't finished. The remedy was working through him now, fully activated. His throat burned, but he had something to say. Something that had been building for 8 years. He saw David reaching for the girl's arm, preparing to escort her away despite his mother's command to wait. No, Daniel tried to say, but it came out as just a rough sound. Not a word. Frustration flashed across his face. David's hand closed on the girl's arm. Come with me, miss. And Daniel felt panic rising. Because this girl, this stranger who'd slipped through a gap in his fence, had done something no doctor, no specialist, no amount of money had been able to do. She'd given him hope. And now they were taking her away. The panic became something fiercer. Something that burned through all his fear and doubt. He'd spent 8 years letting other people speak for him. 8 years of silence while the world made decisions about him, for him, without him. But the girl had given him something. Not just medicine.
Choice.
Agency. The chance to decide something for himself.
And he was choosing to use it now.
Daniel drew in the deepest breath of his life. He felt the remedy working through his system. The buzzing sensation in his throat. The pathways open and ready. He thought about the girl's words. The remedy opens the door, but you have to walk through it. He thought about her walking away, disappearing, leaving him alone again. And he pushed. Not from his lungs.
From deeper than that.
From his heart. From his soul. From 8 years of silence and loneliness and desperate need to be heard. The sound that came out was raw, broken, imperfect. But it was a word. Ma. Everyone froze. David stopped walking. The girl spun around. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. Daniel's throat burned. But he could feel it working. Could feel his voice beginning to emerge. He tried again, pushing harder. Mama. The second syllable was clearer. Still rough, but unmistakably a word. The word his mother had been waiting 8 years to hear. Catherine made a sound, half sob, half gasp. Her legs gave out, and she dropped to her knees in the grass, tears streaming down her face. Oh my God, she whispered. Daniel, did you just... Daniel wasn't finished. He turned toward where the girl stood frozen. Stay, he said. The word came out rough but clear. Then, gathering every ounce of courage, please stay. The garden went completely silent. The girl's face crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You did it, she whispered. Daniel, you really did it. Catherine crawled across the grass to her son, not caring about her expensive suit. She pulled him into her arms, sobbing against his shoulder. I can't hear you, she wept. Oh God, I can hear your voice. It's real. It's really your voice. Daniel hugged her back, but his eyes were on the girl. She helped me, he said, each word requiring effort but coming easier than the last. When I was sick, when I couldn't call for help, she found me. She saved me. He looked directly at the girl. Then she gave me something. Medicine. And it worked. My voice, it's waking up. Catherine slowly stood, wiping her eyes. She looked at the girl with an expression that was complex, gratitude mixed with lingering fear mixed with confusion. How? She asked simply. How is this possible? And the girl, Lily, stepped forward and explained. About the awakener. About her grandmother. About remedies that opened what was locked. About how sometimes you need something different than what science offers. She can't leave, Daniel said, his voice stronger now. Please, Mom. Don't send her away. Catherine looked at her son, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't seen in years. Not just the ability to speak, but life.
Purpose. Hope.
She made a decision. "You're right," she said quietly. "She's not leaving. Not yet." She turned to Lily. "I don't know who you are or where you came from, but you did something today that $25 million and the world's best doctors couldn't do. You gave my son his voice back." She paused. "We're going inside. All of us. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk. And we're going to figure out what happens next." She held out her hand to Daniel, who took it. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she held out her other hand to Lily. "Come inside.
Please.
I think we have a lot to talk about." Lily looked at Daniel, who nodded encouragingly. Then she reached out and took Catherine's hand, and the three of them walked together toward the house. Behind them, the gap in the fence remained open, a reminder that sometimes the most important things slip through the cracks we think are sealed. 3 weeks later, Daniel woke to the sound of voices drifting through his open window. He lay in bed for a moment just listening. Lily's voice, animated and enthusiastic, explaining something about plants. His mother's voice, asking questions, actually listening to the answers. The house had gone from silent museum to something alive. Daniel got up and looked out the window. Below in the garden, Lily was crouched beside a newly planted herb bed, gesturing as she talked. Catherine stood beside her in jeans and a t-shirt, actual casual clothes, taking notes on her tablet. "The chamomile needs full sun," Lily was saying. "But the mint will take over everything if you don't contain it." "So, we plant it separately?" Catherine asked. "In a pot. A big one. It's aggressive." Daniel smiled. 3 weeks ago, his mother wouldn't have known chamomile from a weed. Now she was planning an entire medicinal herb garden with the same focus she'd once used for business deals. A lot had changed in 3 weeks. The first few days had been complicated. Catherine's promise to help had turned into an avalanche of phone calls with lawyers and careful negotiations with social services. Lily had almost run twice, convinced it would all fall apart. But Catherine Morgan didn't build an empire by accepting defeat. The solution had been fostering. Lily couldn't be adopted quickly, that process took time. But she could be fostered. Catherine had gotten herself approved as an emergency foster parent through a combination of resources and sheer determination. "You'll have your own room," Catherine had told Lily. "Your own space. This isn't charity. It's just doing what should have been done a long time ago. Making sure a child has what every child deserves." "What do you get out of it?" Lily had asked suspiciously. Catherine had looked at Daniel, then back at Lily. "I get to watch my son continue to find his voice. I get to learn from someone who knows things I never knew existed. And maybe," her voice had softened, "maybe I get a chance to be a better mother." It hadn't been smooth. There were arguments about rules and boundaries. Lily wasn't used to curfews or people caring where she went. Catherine wasn't used to being questioned. But they were learning. Daniel got dressed and headed downstairs. His voice had continued to strengthen. It was still rough sometimes, still required effort, still tired easily. But it was real. It was his. And he used it constantly. "Good morning," he called from the doorway, feeling the thrill of hearing his own voice carry across the lawn. "You're up." Lily grinned. "Thought you were going to sleep forever." "It's 8, Daniel protested. "That's not forever." "Close enough. Want to help? Your mom wants to plant lemon balm." They worked in the garden together, all three of them, getting dirt under their fingernails. David watched from a distance, but he was smiling now instead of looking suspicious. The gap in the fence had been sealed, but Catherine had done something unexpected. She'd had a gate installed there instead. "In case anyone else needs to come through," she'd said, though they all knew it was symbolic. A reminder that walls weren't always answers. But they'd created something even bigger than a garden. Catherine had worked with lawyers and researchers to form a nonprofit called the May Project, named after Lily's grandmother. Its mission: to preserve traditional healing knowledge, study it scientifically, and make it accessible to people who needed it. Lily's street medicine was becoming something bigger. Something legitimate. while still staying true to her grandmother's teachings. Now there were regular clients who came to the house. Mrs. Patterson still came for her ginger tea, Mr. Davis for his mint salve, and dozens of others who'd heard about the girl with the ancient remedies. That afternoon, they sat in the garden drinking tea Lily had made from their own herbs. Catherine asked questions, genuinely curious. Daniel just listened, content. This was family, he realized. Not the kind he'd been born into, though that mattered too. But the kind you built. The kind that formed when people really saw each other and decided to stay. Hey, Lily said, nudging his shoulder. You got quiet. You okay? Yeah, Daniel said, smiling. Just thinking. About what? Daniel considered the question. About how 3 weeks ago, he'd been silent and alone. About how a girl had slipped through a gap in a fence and changed everything. About how sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. About beginnings, he said finally. How everything's just starting. Lily grinned. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Catherine reached over and squeezed both their shoulders. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, they echoed. 3 months after that day in the garden, Daniel stood on a small stage in a community center in downtown Los Angeles. The room was packed with parents and their children, families who'd heard about his story and wanted to know more. His mother sat in the front row, next to Lily, both of them smiling at him with pride. Daniel's voice was stronger now. Not perfect, he still had to pause sometimes, still had moments where speaking felt hard. But it was his. And he was using it. My name is Daniel, he said into the microphone. And until 4 months ago, I couldn't talk. Not because anything was physically wrong with me, but because my voice was locked. Asleep. Shut down. He paused, looking out at the crowd. My mom spent $25 million trying to help me. She hired the best doctors in the world. And they all tried. They really did. But none of it worked. He glanced at Lily, who gave him an encouraging nod. Then a girl slipped through a gap in our fence. A girl who had nothing but a backpack and her grandmother's knowledge. She gave me something that looked like dirty water in a clay cup. And within hours, I spoke my first word. He could see the wonder on the faces in the crowd. The hope in the eyes of parents who had children like he used to be. I'm not here to tell you that traditional medicine is better than modern medicine, Daniel continued. I'm here to tell you that sometimes we need both. That sometimes the answers we're looking for come from places we're not expecting. From people we're not seeing. His voice grew stronger. My voice was there all along. It was just waiting for the right key to unlock it. For me, that key came from ancient wisdom and a girl brave enough to try something different. He looked directly at his mother. But the bigger lesson I learned wasn't about medicine. It was about listening. Really listening. Not trying to fix people, but seeing them, hearing them, giving them the choice to speak for themselves. Catherine's eyes were shining with tears. Today, my mom and I, along with Lily and our team, are working to help other families. Not just with traditional remedies, though we do that through the May Project, but by creating spaces where different kinds of healing can work together, where doctors and herbalists can learn from each other, where families can find hope even when conventional approaches haven't worked. He paused, letting that sink in. 3 months ago, I was a lonely kid who couldn't speak, living in a golden cage. Today, I'm standing here using my voice to tell you that miracles can happen. But sometimes they come from the most unexpected places. From the people society overlooks. From the cracks in our walls. From the gaps in our fences. Daniel smiled. So my message to you is this. Don't give up. Keep looking. Keep listening. And when help comes from an unexpected place, when it looks different than what you imagined, don't be afraid to let it in. Because sometimes the most powerful healing happens when we're brave enough to trust in something we don't fully understand. The crowd erupted in applause. As Daniel stepped down from the stage, Lily ran up and hugged him. That was amazing. Catherine joined them, pulling both children close. I'm so proud of you. Both of you. They walked out into the Los Angeles evening together. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In the parking lot, David waited with the car. But they weren't in a hurry. "Can we get ice cream?" Daniel asked, using his voice for something wonderfully ordinary. "Absolutely," Catherine said. As they walked toward the ice cream shop, Lily pointed out plants growing in the cracks of the sidewalk. "Look, that's plantain. Good for cuts and bruises." "Really?" Catherine pulled out her phone to take notes. Daniel laughed, a sound he'd never made before 4 months ago. A sound that was becoming more natural every day. They weren't perfect. They still had hard days. Daniel's voice still sometimes felt fragile. Lily still had nightmares about being sent away. Catherine still struggled with wanting to control everything. But they had each other. And that made all the difference. Because Daniel had learned something important. Voice and power aren't the same thing. You can have all the money in the world and still not be heard. You can live in a mansion and still be invisible. But when someone really sees you, really hears you, everything changes. A homeless girl had seen him when no one else did, had given him not just medicine but hope, had reminded him that being voiceless didn't mean being powerless. And in return, he and his mother had given her something too. A home. A family. A place where her grandmother's knowledge was valued and preserved. They'd saved each other. As they sat in the ice cream shop, three people from completely different worlds, brought together by a gap in a fence, Daniel realized something profound. The medicine Lily gave him hadn't just unlocked his voice. It had unlocked his life. And sometimes, that's the most powerful healing of all. Sometimes the voice you've been searching for has been waiting all along, not in hospitals or laboratories, but in the courage to try something different, the wisdom to listen, and the compassion to see people for who they truly are. Thanks for your watching. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to the Story Room for meaningful stories that inspire and teach life lessons.